And I'd be really interested to hear as well whether anyone's got any stories about extraordinary acts of human kindness. We've obviously seen a lot of people volunteer to do with the NHS. I think it's about 750,000 people have volunteered for that. And I think we see a lot of people actually coming together as well. So some really good things there. So any stories that people got to tell on that as well, by all means, put it in the chat window. We may even actually ask you to share it as part of today as well. We're not planning to do any pitching today. We will give you a couple of little options, but it is literally about answering questions and sharing value. And there will be an opportunity to join a close Facebook group and get more involved if you wish to do so. I think without further ado, could I ask Chris, could you just very kindly introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're really passionate about?
Hi, my name's Chris Cooper. Pleasure to be with you today. My interest and what I'm really passionate about is helping businesses to elevate their performance through people. And I do that by developing sporting leaders to develop themselves, their people, and to build highly engaged workforces. I'm also the co-author of The Power to Get Things Done Whether You Feel Like It or Not, which was published by Penguin Random House, New York. And also I host the Business Elevation Show on Voice America for 9 years, which is accessed in over 50 countries. We've just done 370 hours so far of weekly interviews, and just an opportunity here to be here and co-host this with Rupert, and really just going to help during this current situation for us all to become even more aware, so we can help ourselves, help our clients, and help our families in this this current situation. So good to be with you all.
Thank you very much, Chris. That's lovely. Linda, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, Rupert, thank you. My name is Linda Bazant. I'm a barrister and business consultant. My specialisms over the past few years have been GDPR. I'm a data protection officer for some of my clients. I also speak and advise on Brexit transition with regard to the withdrawal agreement and how new tariffs and so on are going to affect us. And the reason that I've got into this particular area with regard to coronavirus is it morphs into the Brexit issues that we had last year, in as much as, although the government were putting lots of information on their website, trying to actually drill down into exactly what it meant and how it affected specific businesses was a problem. So I've stepped into the middle, if you like, and I'm trying to go through all of the issues and try to explain them to all of the businesses as to how exactly it would affect them.
Thank you very much, Linda. That's great. Now, Linda has got a little bit of a story because I don't want to steal your thunder, Linda. There's a very good reason why you can't share your camera today, isn't there? So I'll let you explain that.
Yes, I was actually in the middle of a house move. I just moved from my house. I'm actually staying with my brother and sister-in-law, and the idea was to be here for just 2 or 3 weeks whilst I was looking for a new house. However, the government put pay to that in as much as they said, you are not allowed to look for a new house anymore, you have to stay put. So I am now living out of my brother's bedroom, which has now also doubled as my office, and therefore not really appropriate for video.
I think we'll let Linda off on that one, don't you? So, but Linda was nearly almost so embarrassed about it. You just was 100% sure to volunteer. And so got so much to share, Linda. I'd love to have you on the show. So thank you very much for coming forward on that.
Thank you.
So just give me a second. I'll just bring up a slide here. And I'm going to share my screen, all being well. So hopefully you guys can all see that. Those are the 4 main areas that we're looking to cover today, which I think you're familiar with as part of the email that was sent out to you. I'm sorry, if you want to see Linda in person, there's a lovely picture of Linda there, Linda Bazant. And these are the questions, some of the questions that were asked beforehand, which we plan to cover today. And if you've got other questions you'd like to have answered, please do feel you can drop those questions in the chat window, and we'll do our best to deal with those. If we run a little bit out of time, what we'll do is we'll cover all the main ones within the hour, okay, and we'll come back to those, any outstanding points as well, if that makes sense. So Linda, do you want to could you have a go at answering the first questions? So do I still have to file a VAT return if I'm going to defer VAT payments due to the coronavirus?
Yes, you do have to, you still have to file your VAT return, and that is really very, very important. Some people that I've spoken to think that they can just take the deferment off option and therefore not file the VAT return. You file your VAT return at the same time as you normally would, but what you do is if you pay by direct debit, you cancel your direct debit. And the HMRC will know then that you have opted for deferment, but remember it's only for 3 months. So when you actually get to May, June time and you start to put your VAT returns in for that, you would have to set your direct debit up again. If you're not on direct debit and you would normally pay by check, you don't pay the check, but you still file your VAT returns. And also remember that you will still have to pay that VAT eventually, but you will have until next year to be able to pay it.
Okay.
Make certain that you file your VAT returns.
So relating to that, Linda, thanks for all that information on that. Relating to that, so does that basically, when it comes to the next VAT quarter, you pay that current VAT quarter, and then the part which is deferred, you don't need to pay till next year?
Well, I can give you a little bit more information. The deferment will actually apply between 20th of March 2020 until June 2020. And if I can give you perhaps a little bit more information, if you file VAT returns on a quarterly VAT stagger ending in February 2020, your VAT return is still due to be filed by the 7th of April. However, your payment is optionally deferred. So if you choose to pay your VAT, that's fine, but you can, as I say, cancel your direct debit. If you file VAT returns on a quarterly stagger ending March 2020, your VAT return is still due to be filed by the 7th of May. If you file VAT returns on a quarterly stagger ending April 2020, your VAT return is still due to be filed by the 7th of June. If you file VAT returns on a monthly basis, then your February 2020, March 2020, and April 2020 VAT returns should be filed as normal. However, the payments for these will be deferred. VAT periods ending May 2020 are filed as normal, and the VAT return is filed as normal, and payment is due as normal on the 7th of July 2020.
Wow, it's quite complicated, isn't it? So the crucial thing though, Linda, just if people are not 100% sure, is if they've got a direct debit as well set up, from what you're saying, if the crucial thing is relating to that one deferment is that they must stop the direct debit, because otherwise customer X will take the payment out. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, okay.
That's quite correct. And HMRC have said that they will not write to you about this. They will just wait for you to file your VAT return and cancel your direct debit.
Right. And would it class as one of your lives? You know, normally you get, if you were late, you would normally get one life without a penalty. Would it class as one of your...
There won't be any penalties on this. They're expecting it. This is an instruction from the government to HMRC.
Okay. Hopefully that's answered everyone's questions on that. Obviously, if you are unclear on any points on that, put that in the chat window. If you're going to do that, could you put the number associated to the question, though, so that Chris and I and Linda are aware which question it relates to, if that's okay. So... Sorry, Linda.
Rupert, just one other thing on that, and I know this doesn't happen to all of us, but if you have a VAT repayment when you file your return, the repayments will be processed and paid as normal by HMRC. They won't be deferring the payments.
Right, thank you very much.
So if you do a refund, you get that straight away.
Right, thanks. Chris, on the chat, can you see any questions relating to that first question which haven't been answered?
No.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. So the next question is basically, am I eligible for small business grant funding? Can you answer that, Linda? Give it a bit more background around that question.
Yes, I can. If you have a business that is rateable, so you've got premises and you pay business rates, and even if you don't pay business rates because you're zero rated, there will be 2 levels of grants. £10,000 for properties of a rateable value of £15,000 or less, and £25,000 for properties of a rateable value of more than 15,000 but less than 51,000. And you will find that the local authorities have been sending out their letters probably from yesterday, and you may have already received your letter telling you whether you are eligible for this particular grant, and most companies are. The only problems that some of the local authorities have is if you are 0 rated for your rates, they probably won't have your bank account details because, of course, you're not paying them anything. So it may be worth contacting your local authority and making sure that they are aware of your bank details so that they can pay you the grant that is payable to you. And the grant is not refundable. This is not a loan, it is a grant. However, please remember that probably in about a year's time, I have no doubt that the taxman will want his pound of flesh.
In what way, Linda?
I think that we will see tax going up, possibly national insurance going up. When you saw the briefing from Rishi Sunak last week, he did throw in a sentence that said he would be looking at levelling up the tax next year. And he just did it as a throwaway sentence, but a lot of people picked up on that. And one of the things that he wants to do is he wants to make sure that those that are self-employed are put on a level pegging with those that have salaries.
Okay, that answers my question I was just going to ask. So thank you for doing that as well. Now, obviously, I don't know if anyone's got any questions around that particular point. Number 2, if you have, do drop those into the chat window now. There's one which I can immediately think associated to that, Linda, and that is if you are working from home, so therefore you don't have an office, is there a way you can get small business grant funding in that type of eventuality?
No, if you don't have a business premises that you pay rates on, you won't get the grant, but of course you are entitled to apply for the business loans that are available at the moment. But of course there is a lot of controversy around those as well, because they should have been available from last Monday, the 23rd of March. And a lot of businesses that started to apply for them either were finding it difficult to get through to the bank, or when they did get through to the bank, some of the banks wanted to charge them nearly 30% interest. And they wanted personal guarantees, as in they wanted your house, effectively. So the government, I believe it was this morning, have come out to the banks and said that's not in the spirit of what we intended. And I think you will find over the next, maybe even in this evening's briefing, something from Downing Street that instructs the banks that that is not the case. They are not supposed to ask for guarantees, and they need to look at their interest rates again, because that's unacceptable. And yes, I do agree, banks do need a good kicking.
Yeah. Yes, so it's an interesting point, because unfortunately it sounds of millions of businesses, literally millions, probably 3 or 4 million plus, may be ineligible for this type of funding.
Yes, well, the government made the point that back in 2008, the taxpayer bailed out the banks, and it's now their time to give back to the taxpayer. Yeah,
but the trouble is that the average small micro business is not really going to be helped by this small business grant funding scheme at all, is it? It's only those who've got some on premises.
Not by the grant funding. And no. Of course, as far as small businesses are concerned, they don't want to take out loans because they may not be able to pay them back. And They've got enough problems at the moment paying the bills that they've got without taking on more. Yeah,
quite. No, thank you. In fact, I think Mark Brown has made a comment about the banks there. But, Chris, is there anything you'd like to pick up on the chat that's come relating to this particular point?
I think Mark just said only difference between self-employed and salaried tax-wise is national insurance and a question mark. Is that the only difference?
Yes, and the Chancellor did say he would be looking very closely at that next year.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much. So, sorry, Chris.
What we're saying is, in terms of the sort of self-employed or people working from home, there's no benefits, but actually we're going to be impacted potentially by this national insurance issue and tax increasing. So it's not a win-win for us, is it?
No. But I don't think it's just going to affect self-employed people. We are all in for big tax hikes, I think.
Yeah. So Nice one to cheer us up on that one, Linda. So thank you. So the next question is, how do I get funding, and do I have to pay it back? You've sort of partly answered that already, but are there other routes of funding that are available that you can think of around?
Well, the only other grants that were available were for retail, hospitality and leisure business grant funds. Businesses in that scope are eligible for a discount under the expanded retail discount scheme with a rateable value of less than 51,000. But again, you obviously have to have premises for that because
Right.
it's connected to the rates.
Right. Okay. So okay. So
I think you may find that because an awful lot of businesses that weren't able to get grants can't afford the loans, I think you will find probably over the next week or so that the government will come up with something else for them, because at the moment their fallback answer is universal credit, which also doesn't really help.
Right. Excellent. No, thank you. So I think, am I correct in saying we've got Stephen Sachs on this call today? Is that, yes, I can see Stephen's still with us. I know, Stephen, you've obviously a bit of a specialist in the R&D tax credit side. If you're okay with it, would you be happy to join in the call for 2 or 3 minutes a bit later on? Because that might interest a couple of people, because if you do need to get access to some extra finance, which is been readily available for a while, that might be something else worth considering. Would that be, if you could just indicate, Stephen, that you're happy just to contribute in a minute, that'd be absolutely fantastic. So, no, that's lovely. So, and then if we come back to the next question then, so I'm a director of my limited company or sole trader business, can I claim under the furloughing scheme? Could you expand on that? Because there's a lot of confusion between people who are directors of limited companies or sole traders. Well, interestingly enough, in my particular case, I actually also have both. So there are some people who are directors of limited companies and also have a separate sole trader business. So be interested to get your thoughts on that one, Linda.
So this is connected to PAYE. If you are on PAYE, you can furlough yourself and you will get the 80% from the government, but there is a big but here. For smaller businesses that want to take advantage of the furloughing, you can only do that if you stop working and you have no revenue coming in. And that is going to be a problem for a lot of small businesses, especially working from home, because some of them are continuing to be able to do something. And so therefore they have a recurring revenue during the period of furlough, which means they can't claim the furloughing because they are working. And a lot of small businesses have made this complaint as well, which may also be something that the Chancellor looks at over the next week or so.
Okay.
But you cannot claim furloughing on dividends. Unfortunately, that is a huge problem. So if you pay yourself a small salary on which you are PAYE and you pay yourself dividends, you can furlough yourself on the PAYE area for 80%, but you cannot work.
Okay. And what is the impact with sole traders as well? So, because there's someone I know, in fact, someone I know who's actually on this call, I'll remain nameless because I've not been given permission to share it. But there's someone who knows in the trades, runs his own business, but effectively he can't go out and do his work. So I believe he's a director of a company. So would I be correct in saying he would be potentially eligible to claim under the
If he pays himself PAYE, he will be entitled to furlough. Right.
Okay. And then if you're a sole trader...
If you're a sole trader and you just take dividends, that's going to be a huge problem.
Right. As a sole trader, you can't...
You can only furlough yourself if you are on PAYE. Because the money comes back from HMRC.
Right. So what's the scheme then that's been set up for sole traders? Because I'm not sure it's called furloughing, but there is a way that sole traders can claim under this scheme, isn't there? Under a different scheme, possibly.
Possibly. I don't have the information on that particular scheme, but I can find that out for you and come back to you on that.
Yeah, thanks, Linda. Sorry, I don't know, but I just seem to remember something they were doing for sole traders. So, okay. Any questions you got relating to that, Chris?
Yeah, can I have a look at the, I think we answered the question, is it stop working or no revenue, from Peter. But there's, NASA has put a point on here. Hi, Chris, Linda, Rupert. I use the Capitalize peer-to-peer funding platform, which gives me access to the alternative market. Happy to help if required. And he's just submitted 2 applications. So, I mean, that might be something to connect with NASA about, or I don't know, the ability for them to talk on here.
Yes.
There's quite a few other points coming through quite quickly, which you may want to have a look at, Linda. Sole trade information.
Yeah, actually, I do remember something about this, Linda. This is where, sort of, isn't it based on the previous 3 years' profits as an average? And isn't there a question around if you've been trading less than a year, you may not be eligible?
Oh, yes, yes. As far as that was concerned, initially he came out and said it was going to be on 3 years' profits. However, lots of people came back and said, look, I haven't been trading for 3 years. So what he has said is if you have a tax return, even if it's only 1 year, for the year 2019, you will be eligible for some of the grant. However, if you filed since then, if you are new to business and you haven't filed anything effectively, then there's nothing that the government can do at the moment. Again, as I said, they're going to be looking into it.
Right. Okay. Thanks very much. Just a couple of other things that could be worth touching on, which just made me think about this part around the money that might be available. It's not directly going to help the company themselves, sorry, the director themselves so much. But for example, if you're as a business looking to raise finance, then, and I think one of people touched on this in the chat, there is the SEIS scheme and the EIS scheme. I'm a bit unfamiliar with the most recent rules, but under the EIS scheme, SEIS scheme, the investors can get up to 50% back, and I think it's highly advantageous from the investor's point of view if something goes wrong, because a large part of the risk is removed by the way it's handled through the tax treatment. And if it's under the EIS scheme, I believe it's up to a 30% rebate. So it makes your business potentially much more investable if you're looking to raise equity-based investment. But it's only something that I looked in a little while ago. But Linda, do you know any more about that? If not, might be one or two other people on this call who might know something about it.
Yeah, I think that's something else that the government are looking at the moment. So I don't have anything to add to what you've already said. I think the only problem that people are going to have is finding the investors that are willing to invest.
Yes, I have seen some references to that in the press in the last few days, that a lot of funding is sort of drying up as far as this is concerned at the moment. Okay, thank you. So any other questions have been asked or points have been made on that, Chris, that we could...
Can I ask this question? I think it's, I'm not sure whether we've been completely clear. As a furlough director, and this is from Mark Brown, can I work offering free online training whilst I'm furloughed? So can we, if somebody's being furloughed, can they do things which maybe, add value out there and potentially might help their business in the future, but are not directly revenue generating?
So you mean as a business development opportunity, but they're not actually making money from it?
Yes, exactly, yeah.
So effectively what they're doing is they're setting their business up for the end of this to be able to run with it once we all get back to work. As long as you're not bringing in revenue, that's fine.
Yeah, so we can do added value things.
Yes, if you want to do sales and marketing, that's fine, but what you mustn't have is revenue during that period. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. NASA's got a couple of interesting points around this. Is that right, NASA? I've just seen you make some reference to this as well. So if anyone's got any particular experts feedback on this, it'd be really good. Anyway, we can sort of share value. It may not be directly relating to the topic today, but anything that helps give people access to funds is always worth looking at.
In case people can't see this, I think NASA has... he said, I use the capitalist peer-to-peer funding platform. He's happy in the alternative market. He's happy to chat to people. And for those who can't see the chats, his email is NASA, NASSER, at businesspulse.org.uk. So that's NASA at businesspulse.org.uk. And he has this alternative market. And he's submitted a couple of applications for capital powered by Capitalize. So you can reach him.
Thank you. Lovely, thanks very much. So Linda, the next one really is about, I have a portfolio career or part of the gig economy. What help do I receive? And I did touch on that because my wife is one of those typical cases in point. What help is there for people who are freelancers where they may have a portfolio career, or maybe either through self-employment, or it could be they're actually employees, but they work for multiple companies.
Well, if I can give you, it's actually quite complicated. So if your pay varies because you are on a 0 hours contract or flexible working contract, the 80% limit will be applied to the same month's earnings from a previous year. The average monthly earnings for the 2019-2020 tax year, or an average of their monthly earnings since they started work, whichever is the highest.
Wow.
Exactly, yes.
Try and understand that.
So yes, you can, but there's a lot of working out to be done.
Yeah, thank you. Now, just for the benefit of everyone on this call today, the good news is that this is being recorded. So we will be live streaming this over Facebook and YouTube and through Periscope. It'll be going out as a separate broadcast in light of the fact we couldn't do it for some reason today. But also, we will be making a copy of this recording available on the website. So if you've got some points you've raised and possibly you've missed something that Linda said, don't worry, we will make sure that you have access to this as well.
I think also, Rupert, as a caveat to that, while we're actually doing this today, which is the 2nd of April, because the government are changing their advice on a more or less 24-hour basis, as some of these businesses are coming up with some of the problems they're having, I think you may find that a lot of the advice that we're giving today is based on the information that we know today, and that may change over the next week or two.
Okay, lovely. Thanks, Linda. Okay, now there's a question which possibly I'll help to answer a bit later on, which is more about the sales question, which is my sales are dried up, what can I do? So, because I don't want to take away the focus from here as at this point. And then there's a lovely question here, which is quite a deep question actually, which is how do I survive and how can I thrive in the current situation? So, Chris, so are you ready if I put you on the spot with that one?
How do I survive and how can I thrive?
Yeah, so this current market is a nice one.
Thank you. Okay.
Linda, be prepared for you next. I'll try and answer in a second.
I know what I'm doing. So, is that you're asking me that now?
Yeah. Are you ready to come up with something on that one?
In terms of how I survive and I can thrive, I mean, I think it's I think what's really fascinating at this stage is, and I've been reflecting on this, is that very sadly the coronavirus, people who are very susceptible to it have underlying health conditions, and I think it's a little bit the same for businesses too. Those ones who are maybe not quite as healthy as they could be, or don't have systems already that they've already thought through for maybe online revenue and things. Those are the ones who are going to be challenged, and I'm realizing that myself, and I'm having to think about how I can do more online. What I'm doing to survive at the moment is, I think there's a couple of approaches you can take. You can take, some people are taking the approach that they're almost just sitting on the beach and watching what's happening and not being proactive. Whereas other people are maybe getting on a surfboard and are actually out there, taking action. And I think, my feeling is not to just sit back, is to be proactive, to be talking to all your clients, to be as supportive as you can with all those clients. In those conversations, I've uncovered one, immediate kind of business opportunity. I think there's an opportunity to think about our services in line of how we can help with the current challenges our clients have got, like moving staff to work from home. I'm also, from a learning and development perspective, seeing that opportunity where there's an opportunity for people still to learn from home, and they actually could do with it even more and have coaching even more and support when they're sitting at home on their own. So I think that maybe we think about the services that we can maybe adjust and develop to potentially offer to those clients, and use this time to look at just giving out as much value as we can, being as helpful as we can, so when people get on track, we're the first on their minds to get back in touch with. So I'm reaching out to all my past contacts, I'm sending texts to them, I'm having conversations with them, wishing them well, asking about their families, just being in there, in there listening really. And so far I haven't lost any clients yet. I've gone a bit inactive with some of them, but I haven't lost any yet. And I think I may have done if I hadn't have taken that proactive approach with them. Hope that helps. And I agree with you, Rav. Online training is definitely something to look at, and maybe YouTube and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks for that, Chris. I'll just feed a little bit on a practical basis on that. The thrive part I might come into in a minute because it ties in very well with number 6 and possibly number 8. But survive and thrive. One of the things I would say is that if in a business context, the world seems almost it's sort of caved in a little bit, whatever you do, don't despair at this point in time, because thank goodness the government have given a bit of a breathing space to businesses through instructions to other organisations, and also through giving some flexibility with VAT. But also the other thing is a lot of the funders themselves have been told they've got to be much more understanding of businesses and individuals. Although I have heard of a story today, and again, I won't comment on the person's name because it was said to me in confidence, where they had gone to a bank to try and get a payment holiday on a business loan, and the bank actually turned around and said no, and yet the person had an excellent payment history. Whereas if you're a residential person with a residential mortgage, and Linda, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe if you're finding it a bit tough, you can ask for up to a 3-month payment holiday from your mortgage lender. Now that actually sounds very good. In reality, obviously it's still got to be paid back and potentially caught up on, but also generally, even in good times, banks would normally offer you that anyway if the crunch really came to the crunch. So although it sounds very good, I'm not 100% sure. It's as good as perhaps it's being portrayed. What I would say as well is if you've got a number of people that you've perhaps borrowed money from in relation to business or personal circumstances, you might feel that it's very easy for you to feel very intimidated and bullied by what's going on, or very humiliated. What I would say is don't allow that to happen. It's just about trying to communicate with the people you borrowed money from, and if necessary, make a sensible proposition. But very crucially, if you're a director of a company, what's really important is you can't show preference to one creditor over another. So let's say you've got, I'm making this figure up, but let's say you owed £100,000 in some form of business debt, might be through funding or through suppliers. If you need to pay people in proportion to the amount that's owed, because otherwise you get to difficulties as a director of a company. So just bear that in mind. But you can be a lot more in the driving seat than you think, because at the end of the day, funders don't want the debt to go bad. If it goes bad, then in reality, that's not good from their point of view or from yours. So, just be sensible with any discussions you have. The good news, there is actually quite a bit of positive steps you can do to actually put yourself in a much better space. So, just bear that in mind. I'm also going to share a link, and I'm going to come to Linda in just a second as well on that question. NASA, sorry, I'm not sure I pronounced your name correctly, I do apologise. But NASA shared a link a bit earlier on, which I just copied and pasted into the chat as a panelist, so hopefully you can all see that. And that's what NASA changed a moment ago. So am I correct in saying, yeah, Muriel, I think you've indicated Stephen Sachs indicated be happy to join in a bit, so perhaps we'll set that up. Linda, did you want to try and answer that question, number 7, a little bit more detail?
You're talking about with regard to the payment holidays and so on?
Well, possibly, but it's more about what can I do to survive and thrive. Have you got any practical guidance to give people? It may not be something Chancellors talks about necessarily, but at a business practice, from a business perspective.
Yes, I do. In as much as we have all been so busy running our businesses and doing the same thing day in and day out and making sure that we look after our customers, that now that an awful lot of us are working from home and perhaps we're not as busy as we once were, this is an opportunity, regardless of your area of expertise, to expand on that area of expertise and learn other things that you can offer your clients when you do go back after this is all over. I don't think that we ever know enough And so you can actually benefit your clients by perhaps learning an awful lot more about your area of expertise and looking at what's going to be coming when we do go back. So, for example, the fact that we're working from home, the fact that we are utilizing the technology that's available to us now, I believe that the way that we work will change exponentially once we all start to go back to work, because there are new ways of doing things that we either hadn't realized before or didn't have the time to look into.
Right, lovely, thank you, Linda. One thing I would just mention about online learning generally as well, because that definitely is a very good thing to do, is there is actually quite an extraordinary amount of content already available online. So when you do generate online content, you've just got to make sure it's really good and very engaging and somehow make it really stand out. So the United States is about 2 years ahead in terms of saturation to the UK. The UK is getting pretty saturated at the moment. So if you are going to go down the online learning part of it, just make sure everything you're doing is different. It does stand out, because you may think that what you have to offer is actually unique, but in real terms, it probably isn't. But the good thing is there's lots of things you can do about that. There's also strategy you can put in place now to help you move things forward. So we'll come on to that in just a moment. Number eight is quite a big question in itself. Do people feel we've actually answered that one as part of this or not? This is basically what I was doing is no longer working. What can I do?
I think actually before we went live with the session, we were all talking about it between us. And one of the things that springs to mind with that question, what I was doing is no longer working, I think you also have to ask yourself the question that before all of this was happening, was what you were doing not actually working? And I think that some of us have to stand back and take a really good look at our businesses and probably, as they always say, if you keep doing the same thing, you're going to get the same answer. Maybe now's the time to stand back and rearrange things a bit.
Yeah,
it's a good. There's a number of people here who are, involved in coaching and consulting, and I'm certainly finding the conversations that I'm having with clients at the moment are very much about that. There's some deep searching going on. There's needing somebody to talk about this situation with and just kind of process it mentally, but also, as you just said there, Linda, is what we're doing, and I think they're finding helpful as we're looking at aspects of their business and maybe how they can adapt those aspects to help them kind of thrive. And I think it helps to have other people involved in that conversation. It's not easy just to work it out on the inside, because we're habitual beings, aren't we? We tend to keep on doing what we've always done, but this is really given us that opportunity to take a deep look.
Deep reflection. It's very interesting. There's some very interesting things that come up with technology. For example, who would have thought pub quizzes over Zoom or would become so popular? I was on one on Sunday, and there were, I think, 25 simultaneous connections on Zoom, and it was about 40 people all playing a pub quiz virtually through something like Zoom. And there's also a new app that's come out, isn't there, which would have probably never seen the light of day until this coronavirus came along, and suddenly it's caught the world by storm. I can't remember the name of the app because I've not used it, but I know it's certainly very popular with the teens and the millennials in particular. Hugh's made an interesting point here as well, hasn't he? Hugh, I think you said speaking to some online business, orders have dropped dramatically, but people are still searching and researching potential businesses. And online ad costs have dropped as people are holding their spends. And I believe that's the case on Facebook as well as Google pay-per-click, if I understand that correctly. This is an opportunity to get leads at a much lower cost at the moment. Low-cost leads equals sales in the future. And that's a really good point you've made. And in fact, I've got some solutions around this as well in just a moment. Now, Linda, there are 2 or 3 more questions for you on the next slides, which were asked before the webinar today, people when they filled in the registration for the webinar today. So we'll come on to those in just a moment. Chris, before we do, so anything else that it's house party. So Steve's joined us as well. Hello, Steve. House party, thank you. And Graham's added to that one as well. That's the app apparently. So yeah, thanks very much. And Yes, and Renato's made a great point about how it could be the lubricant of business as well. Thanks for that, Renato. So, Chris, are there some other points we need to pick up on that we might have missed?
Yeah, I thought the good point there from Hugh about ads being cheaper. David Smith is he's just had to shoot off because they're about preparing something, I think, to David. But David just saying that they're preparing because their business is about futurist kind of research, and they're preparing views of the potential longer term changes as a consequence of the pandemic, which might help us with the positioning of our businesses potentially. They're preparing some detailed, and it said it'll be available to everyone initially on his LinkedIn account. So that's David Smith, who has a futures business.
Well, thank you, Chris. So what we'll do then is we'll turn on to the next slide of so these are the three questions that were asked immediately before the session today. So Sophia Botchway, I don't know if Sophia are on this call today, but basically Sophia said, as a director only if limited companies cannot claim support for the dividend elements of their incomes. Interesting. How likely are they to be considered for business interruption loans? Are you aware of that, Linda?
Yeah. Now that has become a huge problem, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier about the banks insisting on personal guarantees and the 30% interest, which is why the government have stepped in and said, no, what you need to look at is if this was a viable business in 2019, you must make the loan available to them without all of these caveats. So there is every likelihood you will be considered for a business interruption loan, but of course they do still have to make some of the same checks that they made before when they were actually going to be offering you a loan before this particular type of loan was brought into play.
Thank you very much, Linda. And Peter, I think your question's already been answered, I think, unless you feel it's been missed in some shape or form, so please do tap in. I think we've answered the David Smith's question as well. Yeah. So in that sense, we've done very well. Now, obviously, I would like to bring Stephen Sachs in and also some other people with other questions. What we'll do is we'll just deal with a few points really about dealing with the last couple of questions, last slide, because it would be quite nice to also, as part of the day, finish up on a bit of a high as well as part of all of this. Hopefully, there's been some really good stuff that's been shared, which all enjoyed. But if we can make a note, Chris, again, if you don't mind just making a note of any questions we might have missed from anyone, any points that people have missed, or anyone that would like to contribute to the call, so we could give them a chance to join in for a minute or two to ask the question, and we'd better hear them and see them. Possibly that'd be very nice for everyone else. The
point from NASA, he's suggesting there's a good site for free courses. So I guess if we want to develop or learn ourselves, it's freecoursesinengland.co.uk/freecourses-1. I'll copy that into the box. Thank you for that, Nasser.
Yeah. So Nasser, you've got quite a bit to contribute. Actually, would you be okay in a minute to just join us if we asked you to contribute? If we brought you into this, could you just indicate yes or no for this? And if you are, we'll perhaps queue up behind Stephen Sachs if that's okay. Great, because I think you've got lots to contribute. Anything else that we might have missed part of this, Chris?
I think that's probably it. If anyone has something that I've missed, then please just put it into the box. I think that's
lovely. So what we'll do then, we'll just move on to just give people just a chance to type anything in, and so we can bring people in as well. This is more from a marketing point of view. It deals really with two of the questions. So if we just go back fleetingly for a second, this deals particularly number 6, 7, and number 8. Okay, so I'll try and do my best to answer this because there is a lot of rubbish going around. You know, it's a bit negative, the environment at the moment, but also there is some positive things going on as well. So it'd be nice to touch on that. Just in that regard, what I would just say is that fear is the killer assassin. I think I made this point last week. In effect, is appealing to the reptilian part of the brain. And as we move into these type of times, we naturally go into mode of safety. The trouble is, it's the reptilian part of the brain is obviously a lot more powerful than the logical part. And sometimes it suppresses the parts that we should still be looking at. So for example, and clearly, if you're about to run out of cash and you've got nothing to live on, this doesn't apply to you. But if you've got a little bit of money saved away, then what I would say to you is, picking up on Hugh's point as well, it really is a good point to be looking at what marketing you could put in place with respect to your business. And the reason being is, first of all, the cost of pay-per-click and so on has dramatically dropped in price recently, but also there are certain things which are working very well at the moment. For example, LinkedIn, as a case in point, is producing some amazing results. We use LinkedIn very heavily, as you would expect, because that's our line of work. But with the engagement rates are very high, a lot of people responding to messages. And you don't need to do any pay-per-click for that as well. So it's worth thinking about that as well. And the other thing is, well, if you put yourself in a position where you are able to start filling the pipeline of business up, as the market does start to turn around again, you're going to be very much riding the wave. So it's going to put you in a really strong position. And the other point I would just make around that as well is that what I quite often come across is people who they go into almost a bit like a rabbit in the headlights type syndrome, where they're totally bemused over what the hell they should do. And therefore, what happens, they make no decisions at all, when in reality, it's about putting yourself, say, in a position to go much better tomorrow. Because if you're finding it difficult now, and you've got no income coming in the next 2 or 3 months, it's going to only be a lot worse in 3 months' time. So what I would say is that it's a really good time to put steps in place now to actually improve things. And it's about thinking very smartly as well. So the analogy I'd give is if, for example, we talked about last week, my wife, for example, went to order some produce from local greengrocers, and they said, well, we can deliver that for you. And they said, I didn't know you could do that. And she said, yes, we can. Not only that, we've got a baker's next door and a butcher's on the other side. We also can help you with that as well. So what had happened, these 3 local stores actually got together, set up a delivery service, and they would deliver to us. So what better thing can you ask for than having to queue up in Tesco's or Sainsbury's or Asda or whatever it may be to get your thing? And that's examples of some smart working which can be really good. And we are very much dealing with the New World Order. It is a case of looking a little bit at your business in terms of what you can potentially pivot as well. So what's been dealing with the question, which the last question is, I think Linda made a really good point. If something wasn't working before this happened, invariably the problem is not the coronavirus and the economic impact of that. It's probably your products or your markets weren't right in the first place. So, and then around that as well, what we say is that it's really important to have these 3 cogs turning. So most of you guys on the call today would perhaps be, if a good opportunity came through, then you may have a very good chance of closing those opportunities down because you've got the experience, you would know how to close those down. But fundamentally, you haven't got any leads coming at the top. The first cog can't turn. As a consequence, then the second one can't turn. So it's really about having a really good prospect nurturing process to deal with that. I have actually just taken a point that Mark's just said just now, actually, which is a really good one. He said, you've got to be careful how you market. It needs to be ethical in the current environment. And actually, 100% agree with that, Mark. Really do agree with that. And that's one of the reasons that we set up these live streams as free calls, because at this time, it's about giving back to people as much as you can. So from our point of view, yes, of course, we need to make money like any business. But actually, if you can find ways of giving back and showing you care, people actually remember that. And it's people like Chris, for example, on this call today, who's chosen to volunteer his time to actually help out, which I really appreciate. And Linda is, as a barrister and very experienced in her field, is being very generous with her time today. And a number of you have also been very generous with the comments you've made. So, it is about being highly ethical and showing you care as part of this. And ideally, as part of this messaging process, you need to look at what you can put in place, and it's part of a 5-message process as well. So lots of direct outreach there. And if you guys had wanted to know more about that, then you're very welcome to do so. I am going to show you 2 web pages very quickly, and then we'll quickly return back to the questions. So this part will take no more than 2 minutes, and then we'll return back to any outstanding questions that we've got here. So just spare me a second. So hopefully you can all see the screen. What I would just suggest you do is, first of all, today you will notice you would have actually gone in here to actually registered for today's live stream. what you will notice as well, if I just go into that momentarily, just for a second, is, and there's a bit of a delay because I'm streaming a video, you can actually book multiple weeks in advance, okay? And the benefit of that is that when it gets to next week, the system will automatically remind you. So you don't have to keep on registering. So it's just worth bearing that in mind. We have got a great person being involved next week by the gentleman by the name of Michael Romling. He's a very experienced strategic behaviorist, works at a very senior level within companies and organizations. I know he's got a lot of value to share over how to market yourself effectively dealing with the coronavirus. And we've got a number of speakers lined up over the coming weeks. I think even Steve has very kindly volunteered as well, Linda, if I've got that correct. Is that right, Linda? Or am I being presumptive there? Correct me if I'm being presumptive.
I think that's a Steve question.
Yeah, that's very diplomatically answered, Linda. So, all right. So anyway, lots of people are very keen to share, which is fantastic. The other thing you're very welcome to do is we're running these online focus groups, again, are free. They're much deeper and they're limited. They're about 2 hours. So normally we only have 6 to 12 people as part of that. So you're very welcome to take part of that. And if you want to know more about LinkedIn as a capability, if you go to the home page, scroll down here and choose that option there. So you'll find there's a 32-minute session, which you're very welcome to take part in. And for those of you who would like a bit more of a drill down, which again is free, if you were to go down to learn more, complete 12-pillar diagnostic, what you could do is fill your details in there, and that will enable us to have a much more detailed call with you, again, free of charge, where we can drill down and look at all the aspects of your business and determine what is working, what isn't working. So after today, do feel free, you can do that. And also if you want to have a sort of a short phone call with myself or Chris or Linda or Muriel, for example, then just put that in the chat and we'll sort of go from there. So anyway, that's enough of what I was going to catch up on today from that point of view. So I think the important thing is I'll leave this slide here so you've got everyone's contact details. But what we'll do now is we'll come back and answer some of the questions. So Stephen's got a lot of experience over the whole R&D tax credit system, and also I think you've got some roots to finance as well. And also NASA, has NASA confirmed it's okay to contribute, Chris?
Yeah.
Excellent, good. Okay, so let me just find Stephen in the attendee list, and let's see if we can open up your mic if technology is working for us. Wait a second, there we go. So we've unmuted on this side, Stephen. Do you want to unmute your mic on your side? And could you answer, give a bit of information on the R&D tax credit side, please? This gives a bit of background about yourself as well, Stephen, if that's okay.
Hi, Rupert. Hello, everybody.
Nice to see you on the call.
Hi. Yes, so I've obviously been very, very busy and involved for the last couple of weeks, working both in terms of trying to rescue funding deals through EIS or SEIS that you were talking earlier that were all falling over and trying to be renegotiated, bank deals with banks walking away or trying to renegotiate, and then this new sort of civils thing, which I'm yet to see a deal actually complete on, although we do have a number of applications into various banks. What I would say is that there are 40 banks or 40 lending institutions which are distributing these funds. But if you look at the list, probably over 30 of them are kind of regional or quite specialized, sort of like asset-based lenders. Probably only 10 are main high street banks. And what you'll find is that you really, if you don't go to your own bank, then you'll be at the back of a very, very long queue indeed. And they simply don't have the resources, the banks, to manage the huge tsunami of demand which is coming down on them. And they don't really understand how to allocate the risk in these products either. So it's, and I know that Linda was talking about, the chance of talking about that later. I'm not sure that this is ever going to be kind of sorted. So that's the first point I'd make. I think the second point is that we have had success in 2 areas. That's namely regional funds, and they're also backed by the British Business Bank. Most of the regions have some, like the Northern Powerhouse Fund, Midland Fund. People are definitely looking. They're still looking to deploy funds, but it's not a quick thing. And the quickest thing, definitely, is this area of R&D, which you just asked me to chat about. So essentially, it works for businesses that have some element of, where they've invested some element of risk. Traditionally, it's always been sort of software or biotech that have always claimed this, but we've done claims for construction businesses, for food and beverage businesses, like developing new menus, for example, that have been quite successful. Also, there is funding available against these claims in advance, up to a year in advance. So you could actually get some money within 4 weeks or so, and then you can also get a drawdown on your next claim. So there's all sorts of opportunities in that particular sort of government area. And as I said, the regional funds probably more medium term. But just a sort of general point, Rupert, I'd just like to make around what you were saying about the reptilian brain is that, and I don't know about reptilian brain, but what I do know is that the current situation has sort of fairly much critically damaged people's trust and confidence. And I think that, everybody's looking at ways of surviving and keep holding on to cash themselves, as is the right thing to do at this time. But of course, in order to do that, if you don't pay someone else, like your landlord, like the bank, like your supplier, and so on and so forth, it damages their ability down the line. And this kind of goes around. And this is why business is very difficult. And I've done business in places like Africa before. It's why business is very difficult to do in Africa, because there's a lack of trust and a lack of confidence. And what I would advise people is to think very carefully before becoming personally liable for debts and getting yourself into debt, trying to rescue or your business moving forward, thinking that this is going to be a quick thing. Because even if all of this nightmare is over sort of tomorrow, which it won't be, or let's say in a month's time, I fear that it's going to take us a long time to rebuild the confidence and trust in business. It just takes a long time to develop. So I would ask people to look very carefully at the free ways of developing additional cash flow within your business, but be very careful before getting yourself into additional debt.
Yeah, excellent, Stephen. I 100% agree with that. And I think that's really important. And this is one of the reasons I made a bit of a distinction earlier on, that if you've got funds to invest in things like marketing or other aspects of development within your business, do it. It's a good time to do it now. Clearly, if you're in a bit of a bad place, it's not necessarily good. You need to focus on what you can do to change your model. And Stephen, thank you very much for that. Stephen, how can people get in touch with you as well if people got any queries? Would you like your contact? Well, just shout them out now. It'd be good for everyone else if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. So you can email me at Stephen with a PH .Sacks, SACKS at fundingnav.com.
That is lovely. Stephen, thank you ever so much for that. So yeah, thanks. Really nice. Appreciate your help. Thank you. Yes, so just bear me a second. Right, and what we'll do is then there's Karen's made a great point here as well, actually, and I 100% agree. She's saying, I agree, and also ask if within your select area there's anything you could do to help. This may help you to identify how to pivot your business at this time. And people need help now, and help in a different kind of area. And I think that's really good. And we've found, for example, in the last few days, we've been going through a lot of the people we actually haven't spoken to for a while, and not with a view to trying to get any business, but again about sharing pure value and finding out how they are. Because if you go out with some form of pitch at this point in time, it can be seen as really insensitive. So it is about demonstrating your caring. And the good thing is that people remember that as well. And I think some of you will join the call today because perhaps myself or Muriel or Sam, for example, has contacted you. So very important, reach out. And what we're going to be doing over the coming weeks is encouraging to engage through these live streams and other areas like this. We're also setting up a Facebook group as well. So just interact as much as you like. and we will do everything we can to help. And if you've got a particular challenge or difficulty, we'll either try and help you ourselves or put you in the direction of someone who can. So over to you, Nasser. You had lots to say as part of this call today. What would you like to share with everyone here? If you've got a particular question that you feel would be great to get some feedback from, and perhaps we could get some real-time answers to that as well from everyone that's on this call today, and be happy to feed back. So Nasser, over to you. Can you hear us okay? So Nasser, we can't hear you at the moment. I'm not sure it's on our side or not. I think you're unmuted on this side.
No, I'm unmuted.
Oh yeah, we can hear you, but you're very quiet, Nasser. Would you be able to just speak up a little bit or get closer to the microphone?
Yes, no, so really what I was trying to convey is that there are other funding avenues out there. The alternative market, although I completely agree with Stephen and Chris, you've got to be really careful and take stock of where you are currently. But if you can look at the alternative market and view that as an option, because as I say, the banks are completely overwhelmed. But also to look at the grant funding options that are available. In my area, there's the Coast to Coast Capital facility, and they've just recently released a £2 million grant funding for businesses within that area, and I've popped up the link on there. But I think the big thing that I'm trying to get across is to collaborate, look out for each other as small business owners or just business owners in general and directors, and see how you can help one another. I think, the point that Malcolm's made about making sales calls, I think we've just got to realise that we need to try and support each other as best as we can, and not every option is going to be the right one. And I endorse the fact about burdening yourselves with debt, and also the government's slight reliance on the banks to have got their systems in place, and that's certainly not the case. I liaise a lot with Capitalise, and they're putting together and have put together a sort of a crib sheet for me to try and get the right information for people that I'm working with. So I hope that really helps.
No, thanks, Nasser, it does. And just relating to that a little bit, my experience of it with banks in the past, for example, there's been a scheme around for years which is hardly used. It used to be called the Small Loans Firms Guarantee Scheme. And in effect, what's almost being done now is like an enhanced version of that, except I think the first year you get is interest-free. But the banks never used to like that, even though it was like 70 or 80% back underwritten by the government. So as they're so overwhelmed at the moment, let's put it this way, unless you've got a very strong business, if you have got a very strong business, in which case you may not need the banks anyway, you may find you get caught in this trap all the time. It doesn't matter how hard you try, in real terms you keep on getting a no. So I have to say I'm not entirely convinced at all that the scheme about raising money through the banks, albeit through the scheme, is going to be that successful for the vast majority of people who are reaching out to it. So I think it is about trying to look at other practical routes to finance. And obviously, Nasser, you've shared some really good ones there.
I can't agree with you more, Rupert. I think the issue is that I probably came as out of the blue to the banks that it did to the rest of us when the Chancellor stood up and made his announcement. It probably has been misconstrued that the government were somehow guaranteeing 80% of the lending to the actual businesses, whereas in fact they're actually guaranteeing 80% lend protection to the banks themselves, and they've got to weigh up the 20% risk before the owner takes 100% risk of borrowing the money. So those things really had to be clarified right from the beginning, I feel.
Yeah, 100% agree. Yeah, I think it's interesting, actually. I think the government, from a personal point of view, have done their best to try and help in very difficult circumstances. But what they've done is actually created something overall which is incredibly complex to administer a whole range of respects. And they probably would have been better to have just given every business in the UK perhaps a little bit of a handout each, just to help them through this period.
I totally agree.
That would have been simple to do, and possibly those people which have been made redundant, just give them a little bit of send some money through the post.
Yeah. I mean,
a bit like a Trump methodology. I don't like to agree with them on that.
Absolutely, I've been advocating a central government grant relief scheme for a number of years. I think they've got very clever people in there, and I think sometimes you need to grow a pair, don't you, at a crisis like this? And they should have just done that, in my opinion, humble opinion.
Yeah, no, it's lovely. Thank you, Nessa. Nessa, just stay on with us for a moment, because there might be one or two other people who want to ask some questions on that. Linda, I'm very keen to give you a chance. And also, ladies and gentlemen who are in the chat and are still staying on with us, I can still see a lot of you are still with us. If you've got some other questions, so if we've either missed your question, we haven't answered it, obviously Chris has been doing his best and I've been trying to follow it as well, then just feed in here as well. So, put your question in now, or say yours has been missed, and we'll try and deal with this. And Nessa, as you're quite knowledgeable on this, I might even ask you to contribute as well as Linda, if that's okay.
Sure.
Linda, just give you a chance for a moment to also type in their questions.
One thing I would like to say, Rupert, is going back to what Stephen was saying about debt. One of the concerns was that when the grants come out from the local authorities, so for example, some very small businesses may suddenly find £10,000 in their business account. Please be very, very careful what you do with it. It is not a present. It is for you to continue to run your business over the next 3 months while we could possibly be in lockdown for that period of time. It's there for you to pay your rent, to pay your electricity bills, to pay any other bills that you would normally have from running your business. So please make sure that you don't rush out and buy yourself a new piece of equipment or something, because that's really not what it's for.
Some very practical advice there, Linda. Chris, have you got something you'd like to add to what's being said here?
Well, I'm no expert on grants or what's available. I mean, I just sort of looking through the comments and some of the sort of conversation here. This is not an issue that's going to be just impact us for 2 or 3 months. It's going to impact us for a long time. So we really do need to get on and think about our businesses right now, but also be careful that we're not adding massively to our debts. I think in the way that we approach our work, I think it was this week, David Hockney, the painter, who was saying that there's only 2 things in life that really matter. He's 83, and that's food and love. And I think we have to, reach into that, food. We'll try and make sure we can get that through our deliveries, etc. But that element of love is thinking about through our work now, just how we really contribute in a loving way and access, our caring selves. We're not selling, in the way we maybe were before. We're selling in a way which is all about just showing that we care, showing we're there, and then hopefully when the time's right, people will want to connect and want to work with us.
Great, thank you very much. I 100% agree, Chris. Nassa, come on, you must have got some more thoughts or ideas. You're full of them. So let's hear from you.
No. I just think I think in general, I think we need to work with each other. I think it's key that's become really apparent is that if people have got special skills, expertise, and knowledge, I think the cloak and dagger approach perhaps has proven that needs to be shed somewhat in this type of crisis, and that if you can share things, of course everyone's got to try and make revenues to survive. That's a fundamental aspect of business. But try and think laterally and try and offer, opportunities for people to try and, continue to trade. And I think the business community then, when we come out of this, will be in a reasonably better shape than we think it is going to be today. That's where I'm looking with my rose-tinted glasses, of course.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And I think the other thing is very exciting to also wrap up on a bit of a positive note. I can see Peter's made a comment here, by the way, about the universal wage subsidy in New Zealand. So,
yes.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I haven't heard of that, so you obviously have. Yeah. So I think it's also what is encouraging as well is we're going to end up out of this by being, I think, a much better people, generally a better nation, much more caring. And also, I think we touched on this last week, Kristen, we talked about, within organizations, a lot of the old guard within some of, dare I say it, some of these banks, but other institutions which actually make out they're really there for the people, but we know they're not. A lot of those will be gone in reality, probably in 2 or 3 years. You've got coming to the age of the millennials, so the next 5 years, they're going to become majority in the workspace. A lot of the millennials, for example, as a case in point, tend to have much stronger sense of social obligation and desire to make a difference. And I think we can all learn from that. And I think what's really encouraging on this call, as well as what's being demonstrated, is that a lot of you on this call actually really care and want to make a difference and want to work together. And, on that note, I think it's a lot of learning at this time, but let's do what we can to help each other. Times are tough, so it is about us all coming together. Do join in on these regular calls every week. They are here for you. I've got some other ideas in terms of what we can also do in this. Just trying to be careful not to set myself up. So to see we can get some volunteers to help us. But it would be nice to find ways of giving back. And if you guys want to get involved in anything, obviously, do message me or Chris or today and come up with some ideas. And always keen to pull these good things together and make exciting things happen. So any sort of closing remarks, Linda, that you would like to make as part of today is concerned?
Yeah, I think that it's just really a case of keeping an eye on what the government are announcing, reading between the lines of what the government are announcing, especially as Stephen touched on the fact that what the government had announced about the loans was as much a surprise to the bank as it was to anybody else. And also, as I'd said, stand back and take a good look at your business, because things are going to change enormously over the next few months. And I think you touched on the fact that I think we're all going to be a lot nicer to each other as well. Because before all this happened, we were so busy going at 100 miles an hour, trying to get the working day done. And just so busy just going through the nuts and bolts of our business, we weren't really paying attention to the people. And I think it's time that we did.
Exactly. Exactly. So, Linda, thank you ever so much for that. Nessa, any closing comments?
No, I echo everyone's comments, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak within the group. It's very kind of you. Thank you.
Well, you have been very forthcoming with your ideas and support. And actually, a number of you today have also done that as well. I'm sorry, we've got a bit of a thing over this chat at the moment. We need to try and figure out how to get around that. It's obviously down to my lack of knowledge, I'm afraid, or I've done something wrong. So we'll figure that one out afterwards. But anyway, this is the second one we've done like this. So
well done.
Get better. So anyway, guys, so make sure you're ready for next week's one. You're welcome to do that. Do contact us, and obviously we'll be here for you. So on that note, Linda, if you want to just, and Chris and Mira, if you could just stay for a minute. But the rest of you do enjoy, have a fantastic evening, and we'll hopefully see you next week.